Well, good afternoon, Clint. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Ben. How you doing?
Clint, I'm doing terrific on this Friday afternoon. After the July deep freeze, I'm sorry, the January deep freeze we had a few days ago. Um, we thawing out.
Yeah, we thawing out. No, I wish we'd get water back.
That would be a good thing. Life is tough without running water.
Indeed. I mean, I grew up at some points without water, uh, because we lived in between civilization and Grand Isle, and we were the only route for Grand Isle getting water. And so summertime, it was constantly running out of water. So it was a constant battle until they ran some new water lines to Grand Isle.
Yeah, that's a tough one, but it seems to be coming back. So hopefully everything will be open back after this weekend.
I sure hope so. My wife does too.
I'm sure. I'm sure she does. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in this buyer series?
All right, today we are going to cover uh, actually selecting a home, selecting a home, and crafting an offer once we've found a home that the buyer definitely wants to buy. We've kind of touched on portions of these when talking about these other parts of the buying process. So we're going to take a deep dive today into it.
Okay, it kind of goes back to the buyer consultation we talked about initially, um, where we gather the information about what the clients must-haves and would like to have items in a house, and kind of keep them focused on the must-haves, and hopefully we get a couple of the wanna-haves included in it also.
Yeah, sometimes we have to remind clients of that. That's I'm not going to say it's a rare thing that happens, but it's happens more often than not where a client says, I'm looking for this, and these are the exact strict guidelines that I have that I want to buy. And then they send me a house and tell me, oh, I want to go see this one. And they decide they fall in love with it. And it's nothing like they said they wanted, but all of a sudden they have to have it and
Right.
wind up buying it.
Well, and our job is to kind of bring them back to reality, and they can certainly change their mind, but kind of remind them about what they initially said they wanted and needed, and those things could change over time. Um, but we just need to we try to keep them focused on what they told us they wanted, and if it changes, then it changes. But it would not be good for them to go buy a house as an impromptu emotional decision, and 6 months after they saw it, they bought the house.
Yeah, because I mean, this is houses are long term deals. It does you no good to buy a house and then 3 months later want to be selling it. That's just a money losing proposition.
Right. Right. Okay. So now we've been through the process of actually finding the house. We've identified it. It's within the budget. Um, it includes the budget includes the principal and interest and insurance and taxes. And we've talked about insurance, the significance of insurance and property taxes and the interest rates and all those things. But the budget is actually the principal, interest, insurance, and taxes on a monthly basis. So we've identified it. So now it's our job to craft an offer in the most favorable light to the seller to give it the the best consideration that we can given the parameters we're working with the buyer.
Yeah, the some of the first questions I ask when a buyer is ready to write an offer on a house is how much cash on hand do you have? And depending on the type of financing they're using, I'll give them an estimate of the maximum closing cost that they can expect. And they're not hard numbers. They're just guidelines on what they typically are, and the especially with the government loans, the maximum that the government will allow the sellers to pay on behalf of the buyers. But they're typically fairly close to a good way to estimate what the closing costs will be. Uh, and we try to, depending on how long the home's been on the market, how much cash the buyer has on hand, so that if they've got a good bit amount, a good bit of cash on hand, then we can maybe ask for less closing assistance from the seller, if any at all. Uh, and then that gives us leeway as far as the offer we can make as far as the price is concerned. If the buyer needs to have all of the closing costs paid by the seller, then that increases the price that I would recommend that the offer be, just because the seller doesn't want to see, and again, it varies with properties, but they don't want to see a $15,000 below list price offer and then asking for another $10,000, $15,000 in closing assistance.
Right. If you're gonna ask for closing assistance, the offer should be at or significantly at the list price, with the discount being the closing cost assistance or seller concessions, as it's now known. Um, so it matters what the buyer's situation is, like you said, about how much cash they have on hand and how much cash they're willing to put into the deal. Um, because after you buy a house, you invariably have expenses. You want to kind of customize it to your likes and needs, and you're going to spend a few dollars on it, whether it's simply paint or changing some things around. So, my suggestion to people is typically to save your cash if you can. And if they accept the offer, you're just rolling the closing costs into the cost of the loan. Um, it's a misnomer that the seller pays the closing costs. It's just the cost of the transaction and a function of the financing to allow the closing costs to be rolled into the loan.
Yeah, the that actually brought up another point that I'm actually blanking on now. Uh, and I completely lost it.
We're gonna edit this part out. Um,
Yeah, I'll probably remember it in a little bit. Uh, I don't know.
all right, let's see where we're gonna pick up now. Um, we talked about rolling it into the loan. Okay, here we go. Another thing to keep in mind is the actual closing date and how long it'll take to get a loan in place. Is typically somewhere 30 to 60 days, depending on the actual lender and the market and the time in the market. Um, so be realistic on how long it'll take to close. And sometimes the seller is motivated to get out of the house, so a quicker close works better. Sometimes they're not quite ready to get out of the house, so a 60-day close may be acceptable to them and make the offer more attractive than one that says they're going to close in 2 weeks. Um, so we try to get a feel for what motivates the seller as well. So when we craft the offer, um, it gives the seller as much of what they want when we can give it to them, so they can give it valuable consideration.
Yeah, because it's if we're throwing things to the seller, uh, I'm not going to call it concessions, but things that are attractive to the seller as part of the offer, uh, then they're more likely to look on the offer favorably and be willing to accept it. It's not an ego thing. It's not uh, uh, I'm gonna beat them down type of thing. It's ultimately we're trying to go for a win-win and make everybody happy.
Hmm. It,
Uh,
yeah, it's you're much more likely to have the offer accepted the closer you are to the asking terms of the property. Uh, so if the seller feels like they're um, they're getting significantly what they want, they're more likely to accept it. If they feel like they're not getting what they want, then they're probably not going to accept the offer.
and to be clear, that's just kind of a general approach for homes that are within the normal time frame of days on market and stuff like that.
True.
Uh, if a property has just hit the market and your client wants to write an offer, then you need to get that offer out there fast, and it needs to be the highest and best offer to ensure that the seller accepts that offer before deciding to look at other offers. If it's been sitting on the market for 6 to 12 months, then you've got a little bit more negotiation room
No
because
doubt.
the buyer is obviously wanting to sell it and hasn't sold yet. So they may be more likely to accept, uh, you know, terms more favorable to the buyer just so they could get it sold.
And when a house comes on the market, um, you know, when you're having conversations with the buyer may feel like the house is overpriced, and it may not be. But I tell them that if it's overpriced, it'll be here a while if you're right. If you're wrong and it's not overpriced, it's not going to be here. Somebody else is going to buy it, and you're going to lose out on the house. So if you want it, you need to take things like that into consideration. Um, the sooner you make the offer on a house, like you said, with the days on the market, the the better the offer has to be competitive. If you think it'll still be there in 90 days, then you wait 90 days and make an offer on a house. But chances are the house will be gone.
Yeah. And once you do make the offer and it's accepted, and this is the thing that I was trying to remember earlier, so that's why I made a little pause so I know to cut this out. Buyers need to make sure that they don't add any extra debt. Don't go out and buy a bedroom set. Don't go buy a new car because that changes your debt to income ratio. Now, if you're independently wealthy, then it really doesn't matter. But if your pre approval or your approval for the loan is hinging on getting by the skin of your teeth to get that approval for the loan due to your finances, do not add any new financing to your credit report because that will kill the deal faster than, you know, a speeding bullet.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot you can do about that. Also, one more suggestion: don't quit your job the day before you buy the house. If you're going to change jobs, buy the house and change jobs after you buy the house because they do verify employment the day of the closing. And if the employer cannot verify employment, the loan's not going to go through. And that leaves everybody in a sour mood. Um, Buyers and sellers and lenders and attorneys and all those things. So just financially stay in the same position you're in when you got pre-approved until you actually close on the house. Um, and unfortunately, I'm speaking from experience on that one. I had somebody do that, and the whole thing blew up in his face. So that's the just keep it real, keep going to work. Just don't get over anxious to do anything drastic until you close on the house.
Yeah, we're here to advise. And like our disclaimer says, we're not your advisors unless we have paperwork saying so. But, you know, check with the agent before, whether it's us or somebody else, before you do anything that's drastic, check with your agent.
Yeah, and
Make sure that you're not doing a left turn or a U-turn in the process.
well, and there's also stories. This has not happened to me, but there's stories of people excited about buying a new house, so they run out and furnish a new house on a credit card and spend $10 or $15,000 on furniture because there's 0% interest for 6 months or something, and they want to have the furniture when they close on the house, and that's a really bad idea. Don't do that. Wait till you buy the house and move your existing furniture in, and then you can buy whatever you want to buy after you buy the house.
Yeah, because ten or $15,000 of additional debt on your credit report, that does not look good.
Well, and if it fits within the debt to income ratio, you're fine. Um,
True.
but you just need to ask some questions before you go off on a buying spree. Because you get excited about buying a house, it's fun, it's exciting, but don't go overboard. Buy it with some trepidation maybe until you actually close, because anything can happen before the closing. And if it doesn't close and you bought $15,000 worth of furniture, you now have $15,000 worth of furniture and no house to put it in. So just have pragmatic actions and thoughts, and not emotional.
All right. So some of the other things that we take into consideration when we're crafting the offer is transfer of mineral rights. We have probably mentioned that before. Uh, at this point in time, it's not really a big deal. Uh, if the seller is getting any type of royalties from minerals being produced, then they possibly want to retain it. You can negotiate for a portion of it if they don't want to give it all up. That's always an option. It's not that big of a deal. If there's no minerals being produced, then it's kind of not really a big deal on either side. Um, some other things would be we typically always ask for a wood destroying insect report. Uh, so that's basically a termite inspection. They go and look for active termite infestation. Uh, so that's one of the things that we I do that on every transaction that I write an offer on because we're in South Louisiana and termites love to eat houses.
Because it stays wet. Um, Now,
Yeah,
another
exactly.
thought on that is depending on whether the house is under a termite contract or not. Is if it's under a termite contract, are you better off getting a WDIR, a wood destroying insect report, from the company it's under contract with, or do you want somebody else to go look at it independent of the contract to see if they see anything? Um, because the older I get, the more I see a conflict of interest in those two things. When the company that has it under contract does the WDIR, it used to be unusual that a third party would do it, but there's a certain pest control company that refuses to issue WDIRs now. So if ours is under contract with them, we have to get a third party pest control company to look at it. And that's kind of when I started thinking about the conflict of interest. It really is. You're gonna send somebody in there that has a contract on a house to see if there's any termites that they're gonna have to deal with if they find any. I'm not saying anybody would overlook it, but they might. So
Yeah.
it just maybe a prudent thing to think about.
Yeah. So there's a few, and I can't really name them. I don't want to name any
Right.
companies, but there's a few pest companies that they don't do the inspections and they outsource it or what have you. Uh, now there's this one outfit out of New Orleans that they've got. maintenance and home inspections and all types of things bundled under this one umbrella. And one of the things that they do is uh, the home inspector does the WDIR.
Right.
But then if they do have issues, then they outsource it to the pest control division to, if they don't have an existing provider, then they outsource it to them
Yeah.
and vice versa. And they apparently do a good bit of business because the one company that you did not name use these people to do their inspections and treatments sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
Because they're,
the company I didn't name just flat refuses to issue anything. They don't outsource anything. They just don't issue them.
well, I, I misspoke. The outsourcing is, say, if a home does have an infestation and needs to be tented,
Okay.
they
They'll
outsource it to
outsource
this
that.
company.
Okay.
Yeah, because they're like one of the only providers in the area that still does tenting.
Yeah. And
Uh,
some of the local inspectors also provide WDIRs for a fee. Not all of them, but some of them do. So that's just another option to where you don't automatically necessarily go to the company that has the house under contract.
yeah. Let's see. What's some other things?
We talk. What about?
Typically,
I'm sorry. Let's talk about the inspection period,
okay.
which is something else we need to come up with. Is how long do you have to do your due diligence to be convinced that you want to buy the house? We did hit on this in a previous podcast, but I like a 2 week inspection period. There are some people think that's too long, and it's not. So we take 2 weeks to do it. It's anything can happen. And coming off the winter storm we just had, where we lost 4 days, and today is really the fifth day that we're going to lose. Um, if something happens, then you're asking for an extension of the inspection period. You can generally get it done in a week, but you also have to get it done, receive the report, digest it, and then do any follow-up inspections if the inspector calls for an HVAC or electrical or plumbing inspection or roof inspection. Then you need the time to set that up. Um, so I rather not box anybody into a corner, buyer or seller. So I'd rather give them time, let them look at it, let them understand what's going on, so they can make an informed, educated decision and not a decision under pressure.
Yeah. And it seems like the last couple of buyers I've worked with, they decide on the weekend to write an offer, and the inspectors, either the inspector or myself, is tied up, and so we wind up not doing the inspection till the following Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so like almost a week later. So you know, I do 2 weeks also, and for the same reasons, just in case there needs to be any deeper inspection done prior to submitting the response,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what that due diligence and inspection period is for how long you have to submit your response.
And another thing to look at when you crafting the offer is the actual closing date. And we hit on this earlier, but get a calendar out and see about a holiday. We have Mardi Gras coming up. Um, it's about 45 days away. And if you just pick a date, you might pick Tuesday of Mardi Gras, and that's not going to happen. And probably Monday or Lundi Gras, the day before Mardi Gras, is not going to happen. Um, and people are hung over on the day after Mardi Gras on Ash Wednesday. So just look at it. You can't see everything that's going to happen, but you can not have a closing date that's a Saturday or Sunday or a holiday. Um, so just be mindful of that when you pick the date. Um, and one last thing, I think Clint might be a deposit on the offer. You
Yeah,
know,
we talked a little bit about that. Well, it's a little bit. We talked a good bit about it in the GFD and title
yeah,
companies
we
episode.
did. Okay.
Uh,
That's just another way to make the offer more attractive to a seller, by the size of the deposit, which is generally refundable. So
yeah,
I don't know. I don't know how long we're going, Clint, but I think we pretty much covered it.
yeah, we've covered a good bit. The let's see, the only other thing I was gonna say is that I'll typically put a closing date for the middle of the week because it seems like everybody wants to close on Mondays or Fridays. Uh, and then I have things going on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I try to set all of my contracts to close on Wednesdays because that seems to be the least busiest day of the week for title companies.
Yeah, and
So just keep those in
also
mind.
the further away you can get from the end of the month, the better off you're going to be. If you're going to close on Friday, the last business day of the month, you have a pretty good chance of not being able to close that. Somebody might get bumped, whether it's the underwriter doesn't get to it, the attorney can't get to it. Somebody, if there's a hiccup or somebody has a hangnail, it's not going to close. Where if you close on the 27th and it's a Tuesday or Wednesday, you have a real good chance of closing that week, before the end of the month. So that's just some tried and true and come from experience suggestions on how to come up with a closing date.
All right. I think we've definitely covered selecting a home and buying or crafting the offer. So just want to remind everybody to subscribe to the podcast on your favorite app. Uh, like like these apps. You can watch us on YouTube also if you're not watching this and you're just listening to it. If you are watching it, uh, give us a like, subscribe to the podcast there, and leave us a comment. Tell us what you like, ask any questions, and share it with your friends.
And comment in the comment section or email us, and we'll take your topics and comments and turn them into a future podcast. All right, Clint, have a good weekend. I hope your water comes back on soon and life gets back to normal. Have a good one.
You too, Ben.
Thanks. All right.